It's time to pick a side. The Border War is on the air with BG and TanMan. Welcome into the Border War for March the 21st. This is BG. I am here with the TanMan. You can follow us on Twitter at the Border War. You can follow me at BG_Border War. TanMan's at TanMan3264. Our email, CarolinaBorderWar@gmail.com. Like and download us through the Spreaker app. We can also be found on YouTube, SoundCloud, and be sure to like and share us on Facebook. Retweet our broadcast on Twitter if you're following us there. Are we going to take the leap back into the past this week, or are we going to hold off on that?
We'll get it. We'll get it real quick.
Well, I'm talking about the Meredith thing. Are we going to put the broadcast back on there this week? Is that a place where people can find us?
Maybe.
I don't know that anybody's actually going there to look for it. I think the people listening there are wondering where we went. Like apparently they didn't get the memo.
They miss us very much.
Yes, we continue to be very grateful for a lot of the listens we're getting. We would like to encourage you guys to listen to the current show every week.
It has a date. Listen to the latest date.
For example,
on there, and
this
the
week
information will be more up to date and current.
And this is no lie. This week, 12 people listened to our January the 3rd show, and it gets better. 21 people last month listened to our July the 24th show.
That's awesome.
We threw a lot of wisdom in that.
Well, as I say, look, man, they want to see where we were and where we are now and see how far we've come.
Not very far, but they probably want to see how correct we were about our NFL and NBA predictions, which is probably not something anybody wants to do.
I was going to say, don't do that.
Don't do that. Catch us up on the weekend sport.
The Sweet 16 is set. They've got some names you know, like Kentucky, Villanova, Duke, Kansas, Gonzaga. A few surprises sprinkled in: Loyola, Chicago, Nevada, Florida State, Syracuse. They all make it. Clemson advances to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1997. They get wins over New Mexico State and Auburn. My Tar Heels are not one of the names you know. They fall in the second round to Texas A&M, and we'll get to a little bit more of that here shortly. But South Carolina baseball, they dropped 2 of 3 to Florida to open up conference play. They lose a midweek game to the Citadel. They will be in Georgia this weekend. The Clemson Tigers on the baseball field were 16-1 before they get swept at home by NC State. They lose on a walk-off grand slam to Coastal Carolina. They will be on the road to Louisville this weekend. My Tar Heels, we sweep Pittsburgh. We beat Maryland 13-1. The Noles come to town this weekend in NBA action. The Charlotte Hornets, they currently sit at 30-41. If they win out, they will finish at 500. Not likely. They're 1-2 last week with a win over the Hawks, but a loss to the lowly Knicks, as well as the Sixers. All those on the road. They'll be in Brooklyn tonight. They will be at home versus Memphis on Thursday. Back out on the road Saturday to Dallas to take on the Mavericks, and come home to take on the Knicks on Monday. BG, an interesting one here. Former Cowboys cornerback Orlando Scandrick is now you guys' problem. He inked a deal with the Redskins a few days ago. And finally, Rory McIlroy shoots an 8 under 64 on Sunday to get to -18 and win the Arnold Palmer Invitational by 3 strokes. Some notables: Justin Rose finishes 3rd at 14 under. Henrik Stenson 4th at 13 under. And Tiger Woods tied for 5th at 10 under. They stop in Houston this week, and then it's on to Augusta. 2 weeks away from the Masters. I can't wait, man. With all the big names that have already won this PGA Tour season, Sunday at Augusta could be amazing.
Hopefully the weather will be a little nicer than it is here today. It's a little nippy outside for the Masters.
Man, it could snow every day for 6 months, and then Sunday, the week of the Masters, man, it'll be beautiful. That's just the way it is.
It is kind of the way it is. I don't really recall ever seeing like a rainy Masters or.
It doesn't happen that often.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't happen now. 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks. It's going to be awesome.
It is. How do you feel about the Orlando Scandrick thing? I mean, we're not paying him anything. That's part of it. I mean, I think he's getting like $1 million a year. Is basically what it comes out to.
Yeah. That stuff doesn't bother me like it bothers you. If Washington is
what bothers me,
you said before, you don't like the whole going back and forth thing. Look, man, if that's the best deal for you,
I said is I think a lot of the rivalries in the NFL took a hit with free agency, but I don't think you can go back to a period where you didn't have free agency. Like I tweeted the other day, he's going to end up being the corner. I mean, the nickelback. He's not going to be on the field during.
Yeah, I mean, look, he didn't really play for us last year. He's hurt. If he stays healthy, good luck to him.
I think we're bringing him in for locker room leadership more than anything else, but we'll see how it works out.
He turned into a nice player by the time he left. He got off to a rocky start with us, and he wasn't always my favorite, but he turned into a nice player. Hopefully he stays healthy.
There were times when he was the best defensive back in your backfield.
That's not saying much.
That's not saying much, exactly. All right, so moving on to the tournament, TanMan. I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, so I remember, last week, we talked about Arizona.
Yeah.
And you said they were seeded incorrectly, and it turned out you were right, but not in the way you thought.
Yeah.
Turns out they should have been about an 11 seed.
Yeah, well, we'll start there in the South region. That one completely blows up. Obviously, you've got Maryland, Baltimore County knocking off Virginia in the first round, the first 16 ever. To win. What were they? 0-135. So they advanced on.
They didn't win on a last minute shot either. Ted,
no, they flat dominated them.
That was a beat down.
In that South region, another really a bunch of upsets. Of course, you've got Buffalo knocking off Arizona in the first round. Another one that wasn't even close. Loyola Chicago over Miami.
A lot of people picked that one.
They were a trendy pick.
But that's where it was supposed to stop.
Yeah, that's where it's supposed to. They get another one, and the other one, Nevada. If you listen to a lot of the air quote experts, Nevada was a team that they tried to tell us about.
Yeah,
they tried to. They've got a lot of high major Division I transfers. The Martin twins from NC State.
Yes,
they're on that team. So a lot of experience.
Both of those guys played big in that game versus Texas, and I'm telling you, I knew better than to pick Shaka Smart in this tournament. I knew better.
Yeah.
But the big name and the big school, it got me. And I've consistently argued that Nevada, other than the teams I pull for, I think Nevada's got the best logo in the NCAA.
Yeah.
I love their logo and their colors.
Beating Texas is not really that big of an upset. But coming back from
speaking, it's not an upset at all.
Coming back from, what were they, down 22 against Cincinnati?
Yes.
And they come back. They come back on a team that is one of the better defensive teams in the country,
That's
Cincinnati,
the one that really
and they blow a
jumps out at you
22-point
there.
lead. So in the South, you've got Kansas State, of course, advancing. They'll play Kentucky, who John Calipari was not happy with the draw they got, with the location, and it had just opened up a path like you've never seen before, literally never seen before. This is the first time in history that the top 4 seeds from a region did not make the regionals.
Let's be honest, though. At Kentucky, making a Final Four, it'll placate people. They're going to have to beat 2 good teams to win something significant here.
Well, the natives were getting restless up there in Lexington,
and it definitely calms that down.
They went on the run a few years ago as an 8 seed. They followed that up with an undefeated season where they're 38-0, and everyone thought they were just going to roll to the title. When they lose in the Final Four, the next year they lose in the second round. Last year they had a great team. Of course, Luke May sent them home in the Elite Eight, so they haven't been to. They haven't been to a Final Four in a few years. They haven't won but the one national title. So Calipari is trying to get some folks off his back. I'm just saying there's a job that may be coming open up around the Great Lakes area. I don't see him. And if it's not this year, it's happening.
Yeah. It's coming. What he's tried in Kentucky, to me, it's clearly reached its glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid. You're not afraid, but I think Mike Krzyzewski's going to find the same thing in Durham. I think that this sort of playing with one and done kids, it gets you somewhere but it doesn't get you where you want to be.
Yeah. Moving over to the East, really a lot of chalky. You had Marshall upset Wichita State in the first round.
Yeah, this is really the only bracket that you could say looks exactly like what everybody would thought it would.
West Virginia was a popular pick. Villanova and West Virginia, two of my Final Four teams to start the year. They match up in the Sweet 16. Villanova looks unbelievable right now. If they keep shooting the way they're shooting, they're going to be a hard out. On the bottom half, Purdue survives an in-state battle with Butler. They will draw Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Down in the Midwest, Kansas, they will take on the Clemson Tigers. And Clemson with two, I don't want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? Not easy, but relatively mundane. I mean, they kind of rolled through the first weekend. New Mexico State really didn't give them a fight like I thought. And they just flat beat the brakes off Auburn in the next round. I mean, they just beat the brakes off Auburn.
How much of that game did you watch? I watched the first half.
I'll be honest. I went into about a 2.5-hour basketball hiatus because that game came on right after our game, and I just needed a break. To be completely honest with you, I needed a break.
You know, the whole joke about Auburn and Clemson, obviously, is that they're the same school, except Clemson has a lake. And I thought Charlie Whitehurst had Woody Whitehurst, as he goes by on Twitter, had the best tweet. It's a good thing Auburn doesn't have a lake because these boys couldn't hit it if they were throwing the ball from the shore. But it's true, man. Auburn
they couldn't hit anything,
not shoot. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Clemson. I think Clemson played well enough to beat them even on their best night. But that score, it's just absurd.
The bottom half of the Midwest there, the shocker of this region really, Michigan State, a trendy pick to win the whole thing. They were my Final Four pick out of this bracket.
I had them in Final Four also.
They go down. Syracuse knocks off Michigan State.
But you called that. You called it last week. You said you thought Syracuse would be the team that got in and won a few games shouldn't win. But
now they draw Duke. And I just real quick on this Syracuse-Michigan State, I don't think that they're going to beat Duke. I think Duke is, everything is the zone. I was
about to say, how many 3-point shots will be made in this game?
Look, Duke
93.
Duke has seen the Syracuse zone. They just played like 3 weeks ago. It wasn't close. But Michigan State is a team that has not seen the zone. They're not as familiar with it. Syracuse's length really gave them trouble. So again, the Midwest, Kansas, Clemson, and then Syracuse and Duke out in Omaha. They've got ACC tournament. Round 2.
I'm just happy Clemson finally made it to Omaha.
Yep.
After all these years.
Round 2, 3 ACC teams in Omaha. Out west, Florida State representing the ACC again. They come back against Xavier, and that's one that I honestly went to bed. I turned around.
I thought that game was over.
Xavier's up 10 or 11. I thought, here it is. And I wake up next morning, and Florida State's knocked them off. They had the late game. One that kind of snuck out. Gonzaga knocks off Ohio State. Buckeyes maybe gave that one away a little bit. I don't know. Michigan knocks off Houston in the second round on a last-minute shot. And finally, that's all we have.
No, there's one right here.
There's region. One you missed right here. There's nothing left in the West region to talk about.
Let's see. There's...
Yeah.
UNC and Texas A&M.
Yeah. A&M beat UNC. Didn't beat. We'll get to us in a few minutes, but that didn't beat us. They beat us.
This is the story. This game, what you just mentioned, Florida State beating Xavier. To me, and hear me out here, that game is the story of this tournament because I checked the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even heard that it happened. It was a late game.
It was.
Okay. I didn't know about it until about 10 o'clock the next morning because it wasn't on ESPN's page. I mean, it wasn't like the big headline I'm saying. When a 9 seed beats a 1 seed and it's not even the 4th biggest upset in the tournament, that's when you know this tournament is really March Madness.
Jay Billis had an article on ESPN today that I read where he basically went through and tried to make the case that this tournament was not any different than any other tournament.
That's crazy.
And that's what I thought, too. That's crazy. So we'll start with Maryland-Baltimore County real quick. We got a lot to get in. Maryland-Baltimore County knocks off Virginia, the first ever, like we said, 16 over a 1. BG, did you think that a 16 would ever beat a 1?
You never say never. I mean, but on any given year, it's not going to happen this year. You figured it was going to happen. But no, not really. I mean, there's no end of it. This certainly wasn't it.
No, this Virginia was thought of as being the most complete team, the best team. They were the unanimous number one team coming into the tournament. I remember my wife filling out her bracket, and she asked, "What is UMBC?" And I said, "Don't worry about that." I said, "It's not going to matter. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, we know what it is now.
Yeah, they come out, and I've heard it argued that maybe Virginia's style lent itself to this kind of upset. They don't really score a ton of points. If a team can get hot, then maybe they can give Virginia some trouble. I just thought Virginia's defense would be the difference in the ball game.
Would stymie them. I mean, would absolutely shut them down.
Clearly, DeAndre Hunter's absence made a much bigger difference than anybody expected because they could not stop anything.
But look,
50 points, 50-some-odd points in the second half.
DeAndre Hunter, no DeAndre Hunter. I'm going to cut it to you straight, man. There is no excuse for this.
Like I thought it would eventually
can't happen.
I thought it would eventually happen, but in my mind, I had it pictured as a 16 seed loaded with seniors. Maybe they're a little underseeded, kind of like Penn was when they gave Kansas a run for about 30 minutes or so. Maybe a little underseeded team against the 1 seed with a lot of freshmen. Maybe something that looks like
or somebody
like
that depends on scoring, but not a defensive team.
Or sometimes you'll get, maybe the top is not really as strong in some years, and maybe one year you get a weak number one, and it just becomes a perfect storm. This was not what I expected.
No.
As I'm sitting there watching it, I texted you, I texted everybody I could think of with about 12 minutes to go, and said, whatever you're doing, stop what you're doing right now.
Well, your text to me was a little more insulting
and turn this game on.
It was a little more insulting than that, but I was already watching the game. Okay. I was watching the game.
Oh, man. I almost didn't send out a text. I was like, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it. If I say something, I'll jinx it.
Well, you're already the one that caused them to lose to start with because of the comments you made on last week's show.
What's that?
Well, you said that they belonged, they being Virginia. We did not spend a lot of time talking about Baltimore County on last week's show.
No, we did not.
You said that they belonged in the same conversation now with Duke and North Carolina, and
I still think they do.
I think that's crazy.
Now,
you're crazy.
This
is an embarrassment.
It's embarrassment. All right, North Carolina's lost in the first round before. Duke lost in the first round. Was it 2 out of 3 years or 2 out of 4 years to Lehigh of 15 and Mercer of 14? Now, this is bad. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. This is bad. But you can't tell me and take away what Tony Bennett's accomplished up there. I mean, what they have done deserves to be in the same conversation as the rest. This was a bad night. Look, you say all the time, don't judge a man on his best day and don't judge a man on his worst day. You can't judge this program over a 2-hour window.
I'm not trying to say, look, what they've done is what they've done, but I said it last week. They have no titles.
No.
And you guys have handfuls of titles, so that's absurd. They didn't win a single game in this tournament. And yes, that's the nature of the tournament, but I said it last week. They've got to win a couple. They've got to get... I think Virginia had to make it to the Elite Eight to argue that they had a successful tournament. Man, they didn't sniff it. And not only did they lose, they got destroyed by a school that no one has heard of. I have relatives that are from Baltimore that hadn't heard of this school. They are, get that straight now. They're from there.
Yeah.
The same place. They hadn't heard of this school.
Well, I don't think that getting into the Elite Eight would have made a difference. It was Final Four or bust. I mean, let's be honest. It was Final Four or bust this year.
I'm trying to be forgiving.
But I really don't know what else to say.
Now, the good news is the conversation continues. They're going to be back next year. They have to. Okay, and it's the flip side of it.
Kyle Guy's just a sophomore. I mean, those guys, they're going to be back in the mix again next year.
The flip side of it, just so you know I'm being consistent, and you give me this, man. I have said this all basketball season. South Carolina's Final Four last year isn't going to end up meaning diddly squat if we can't get back on track, start making the tournament. I'm not saying you have to go to the Final Four maybe ever again, but you got to make it into the Sweet 16 every 5 or 6 years. You got to do something to build off that. Otherwise, it's literally just that. It was just that 1 year. You had a great year. You got hot in the tournament. Okay, if you're Virginia, obviously you're well above the level of South Carolina. I'm not trying to make that comparison. But what I'm saying is whatever their goals are, they need to meet some of them. Because the postseason in college basketball, it matters way more. It just does. And they blew it.
Look, I heard Sunday morning... some of the folks on TV and things where they had a discussion. Is this going to be what hangs on the first line of Tony Bennett's Wikipedia page for the rest of his life? Is there a way that he can live this down?
For now, it will be.
And how do they come back from it? To me, what they've got to do is they've got to own it. It happened. You can't run from it. It's going to be on every March highlight from now to the end of time. You've got to own it, man. But don't change what you're doing. Maybe if you want to open the offense, I'm not going to argue with you saying maybe they need to try and become a little more offensive. But for the most part, Tony Bennett, that program, don't change what you're doing. You
because
are
it was
who
one
you
bad
are.
Game.
It's one bad game. You are who you are. You've won a lot of big games. They just haven't been in the NCAA tournament. Those will come. They came for Mark Few. They'll come for Virginia. But until that happens, unfortunately, this is going to be what people talk about and think about when they talk about Tony Bennett and the Cavaliers.
All right, let's move on to Clemson a little bit. I don't want to shortchange them, even though we don't really have anybody who wants to come on the show and represent the Tigers, but that's a separate issue. Look,
they had a heck of a weekend, man.
How much of this does, in your mind, does Brad Brownell get credit for?
Probably more than he should, if you want my
honest opinion. I'm saying, really, in your mind, how much should he get credit for?
He should get some. He should get some credit.
Well, he has to get some.
I've been really difficult on Brad Brownell. I've made my opinions.
You've been difficult on him this week.
If you listen to this show, I'm not a big Brownell fan, but he had those guys ready to play. They went all the way. It's not like they drew a favorable draw around town. They went about as far away as they could go.
Yeah.
And they went out there and handled their business. And like I said, against a really strong 12 seed, in that 5-12, ripe for an upset matchup. Really didn't have any trouble. Watched a few minutes of that game. I said, well, this isn't. And I flipped it to another one. Same thing with the Auburn game. Like I said, I took my hiatus, my period of mourning. I come back, look up the score, and I see that they've beaten Auburn by 119 points. I said, oh, well, there you go. What else can you say about it? Like I said, a heck of a weekend. Tip your cap to them. If they really make a run, they're going to have earned it with what's left in that bracket. And,
absolutely, yeah.
We'll see. The business is about to pick up down there. Let's leave it at the business is about to pick up, as old JR would say. Like I said, they're out there in Omaha. They got Duke, a potential matchup with Duke. They're drawing Kansas up next. You guys just coming off of a Final Four BG from a Gamecock perspective. I'm interested to see what you think because, like I said, if they get there, they're going to have earned it. They're going to beat the big boys now. But what's your, how do you feel? Because one thing I told you on you guys' Final Four run is that I said, you guys have something that they'll never have, that they'll never make a Final Four. And whatever happens, you guys will always have that. Now, another big weekend, and they may match you. Coming right on the heels of you guys, what does that make you feel like as a Gamecock fan?
Well,
does it take any of the shine away?
It depends on what they do.
Well,
if they lose to Kansas, no.
Well, I know I'm saying they make a Final Four. Does that take some of the shine away?
Oh, no question.
Yeah,
no question.
Right on the heels of you guys.
No question. If Clemson's basketball team makes it to the Final Four, Yeah, it definitely takes some shine away, particularly, and this is just how it is. South Carolina fans need to admit this. I mean, our Final Four, the early parts of it were paved for us. We got Duke in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, man. If that thing's in Greensboro like it should have been, you probably don't have it Final Four. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, now, but to be fair, when you say like it should have been, well, Duke's been getting that Greenville, South Carolina treatment for years.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you were a 7 seed.
Right.
You know, you should have gotten a favorable. I don't know, but a 7 seed in their home state doesn't happen very often.
It does not.
So,
but you got to give South Carolina credit for
they took advantage
a lot of
it.
times what happens when you set up like that and that volleyball's just hanging right in front of you is you missed the spike. But they did not. They made a Final Four. But yes, no, there's no question. Any South Carolina fan that tells you if Clemson makes a Final Four, it doesn't. Please, it definitely, especially
if they go through
with
Kansas
a baseball team that looks like it's on the up and coming. I mean, not playing well right now. A football team that just came off a national title 2 years ago. There's no question.
Well, as I say, especially if they make their Final Four, they're going through one Kansas, probably a number 2 in Duke. Not taking anything away from you guys, but one thing on your run, your bracket did open up a little bit.
Oh, sure.
So you're in there with Villanova last year. Wisconsin beats Villanova, so you don't get a 1 seed.
Right.
So you guys get Baylor, who's, it seems like you used the term before a lot, glass ceiling. It seems like they have a glass ceiling. They only get so far in March. And then you get a Florida team that you've seen before and familiar with.
Right.
And so it's kind of like the pressure was off a little bit, in my opinion.
No question.
So if they get there, I think their run's a little tougher than you guys is. But
that's a big fat
if
right now.
That's a big if. That is
a big fat if right now. And here's the thing.
What about the extension Brownell's getting ready to get? Man, I hope that's a big fat number right there at the front of that thing. I hope he's there for years.
Yeah. What I was going to say, I don't want to get off on our topic because we'll run out of time eventually here, is, there was a question posed on Twitter by a listener of our show. I think the tag's South Carolina high school football. Mostly tweets about high school football. We don't talk about high school football, but he does listen to the show. He or she, whoever it may be. Who would you put on the Mount Rushmore of South Carolina football? I mean, South Carolina sports. And, the conversation started off with, well, Lattimore's up there. And I sort of made the argument, well, I think you could put Connor Shaw up there instead of Lattimore. And then we talked about whether it should be, Michael Roth or Jackie Bradley Jr. up there. And then you talked about Sendarius Thornwell, and I said Asia Wilson. And so my point being, you got all these different athletes from all 3 of your major sports that you could make that argument at South Carolina that have had success. When he posed that question to Clemson fans, I want to let you guess what he got back.
Well, I'm sure it was
4 football players.
4 football players. I'm sure
over and over and over.
Yeah.
So that would be the real shame in this. If Clemson has success, real success, and something else, that's what I've always prided myself in as a South Carolina fan, that as I actually pay attention to all the sports, and that we tend to do, even though you've made the valid argument that our fans didn't really turn out for basketball the way they should have, but our fan base has historically supported pretty much any kind of winner we have. Not always the case in Clemson.
I wonder what the buzz is around Clemson right now. I mean, they're in the Sweet 16 for the first time in 21 years.
I haven't heard one person at work or anywhere else except Clemson Kev, and he doesn't really mean it. He's just pretending. They don't care. I'm telling you, man, they do not care.
Unbelievable.
They don't care.
Like I said, business is going to pick up for the Tigers this week. The Jayhawks, they haven't really played a great game yet, so they are. I expect one day this weekend, Kansas is going to look fantastic.
Speaking of looking fantastic, let's talk about Texas A&M.
Well, what do you want to talk about?
Well,
they look fantastic.
Give me a basketball breakdown of what happened. Now, all season, I have said I had an angry friend of mine tweet me. He wanted me to give you a message that you had single-handedly destroyed his bracket because he bought into your crap, as he put it, about North Carolina. And he said, BG, you tried to tell us all season that if Joel Berry II couldn't score, that this offense couldn't hang with anybody.
Listen, time out. I'm going to stop you. This was not about Joe Barry struggling, Joe Barry not being able to score. This is not on the shoulders of Joe Barry. This is on the shoulders of the whole entire team. Nobody could make a shot. Nobody. It was 6 for 31 from 3.
But have there been games where he was the primary scorer and everybody else struggled and you won?
Well, of course. Of course there are.
Have there been how many? But has that happened more, or have there been more games where Joel Berry struggled and someone else picked him up and carried him? Which was my point.
Look, I think you're putting a little bit too much at the feet of Joel Berry. You have a meltdown. Go
by what you told me.
You have a meltdown like we had on Sunday.
You told me that there was a whole church founded in his name in Europe that you were thinking about joining. That's why I have so much faith in Joel Berry. Well, it's your fault, man. You sold me on this.
You cannot put this at the feet of Joel Berry. You have to lay this at the altar of the entire team. But I don't want to make this about what North Carolina did do. We didn't do a lot of things well, but let's make this about what Texas A&M did do well. That was a team that was a top 5 team to start the year. They started off like 17-1. We've talked about it. They hit the skids, hitting conference play to open up, and it felt like they spent the whole rest of the season trying to catch up, trying to live up to their expectations. Maybe sometimes the effort wasn't always there. By golly, the effort was there on Sunday. I mean, those guys inside, I hate to say it, it almost is kind of like we got, I don't want to use the S word, but it was almost like we were scared a little bit. Mm-hmm. We get inside, we're pushing the pace, we get some easy baskets early, up 21-13, then the wheels fall off. We go about 11 minutes and doesn't score at all. Wheels come off, A&M capitalizes. And look at when you stand out there and shoot 3 after 3 after 3 and they don't go in, and those guys are getting easy baskets over and over again, man, that lead starts swelling up, and there's no catching up. So, like I said, this wasn't as much on what we didn't do. This was more about Texas A&M and what they did do.
All right, well, let me ask you this, amazing. Though, and I know I keep hammering on it, and maybe next year you get back and you think that Roy's going to go back to playing big. You're putting a real power forward up the court, getting some size under the basket. How much of this game is because since the outside shooting wasn't working, you don't really have an inside game to turn to?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, that was the story of the day, really. I mean, we just didn't. We could not go when we couldn't make any threes. Usually, the thought is throw it down inside, get an easy. Somebody see the ball go through the basket. There's nobody to throw it to.
Right.
You really don't have a choice. And when we did go down there, I think A&M had like 7 blocks or 8 blocks. And so when we did go down there, we did get to the basket. It was promptly rejected and returned the other way. So there just wasn't a whole lot we were able to do. The NCAA tournament is, I guess I would say it's perfectly imperfect. The best team, the best team doesn't always win. The best team, and I'm not saying we were the best team, but you're gonna have these upsets. You're gonna have these ball games. I hate the way it ended for these guys, but I mean, it was going to end at some point. It's just a little disappointing that it ended with a thud instead of being able to make some sort of run.
Don't you think, too, though, and I've talked about this, I mean, like college basketball, I said it last week, these games are short, man.
They're short. The season is short. The whole thing, man.
If you look at a college basketball game and you look at how much, so you've got a 40-minute running clock. Okay, now, how much time would you say runs off just in inbound passes and ball transitions? I mean, I'd say that's maybe 15% of the game right there. So you're already down to, I don't know, like 32 minutes of actual playing time. And when you get a lot of half-court offenses and stuff, I mean, it's not like the NBA. You don't have just chance after chance after chance to score and come back.
Look, when you when we went all in on the small lineup, when Cam Johnson finally got healthy,
Right.
and when we went all in on going small, Roy tells him, and he said after the game, he said, hey, we're going to do it, but you still got to go rebound. And they did. And they made shots, and it worked. But somewhere in the back of your mind, this game was always a possibility. And we've seen them struggle a little bit at times through the year, but nothing like this. I mean, this was just...
But the games where they have struggled was the same formula. When they couldn't shoot.
They had a tough time. But, they couldn't get any rebounds. It was not a good day. And like I said, disappointed that it ended like that with Joe Barry and Theo Pinson, but it doesn't take away from what they accomplished.
Well, I was going to bring this up. So you've got on here the sort of final, reflect on the season and careers of Joel Barry and Theo Pinson. I'm going to go make myself a sandwich. Maybe do a little yard work. When you're done, you just let me know, and I'll come back in and we'll do hour number 2.
Well, I thought you loved Joe Barry and Theo Pinson.
Joe Barry betrayed my bracket, man. I will never forgive him.
Well, Joe Barry betrayed a lot of brackets, and so did Cam Johnson and Luke May and Kenny Williams. They betrayed a lot of brackets.
He single-handedly cost him that game.
No, look, these guys, they won. 2 outright ACC regular season titles. They played for 3 ACC tournament titles, went to 2 Final Fours, played for 2 national championships, won 1.
So you're saying they're almost as in the same conversation with Virginia then? Oh, wait. Virginia hasn't done any of that.
Okay. You watch. You keep hating on Virginia.
You're talking about the future. I'm talking about what's already happened.
I'm talking about right now. Virginia is basically, they've won, 4 of the last 6 ACC tournament or ACC regular seasons. They won the ACC by 4 games this year, man. Stop hating on the Cavs. This is supposed to be our love fest for Joe Barry and Theo Pinson. The slow songs, little tears.
I'm just
careers are finally over.
Look for some peanut butter and strawberry jelly, man. I'll be back in a minute. Go ahead.
Strawberry jelly.
I love strawberry jelly on a peanut butter sandwich, man.
Why are you wrong about everything, man?
You don't like...
How are you wrong about everything?
You're pure grape, I guess. That's all you'll do.
I mean, strawberry's all right. I love strawberry. Strawberry jelly on a peanut butter sandwich. I mean, it's okay. It's serviceable. But grape is the go-to. Grape is the go-to peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Okay, well, I love how you plug the context in. Like, maybe... I've had a whole bunch of grape jelly peanut butter sandwiches here lately, and I was going to go look for strawberry just because I want to switch it up. But I tell you what, you fill your little narrative in. Look, look, your time's running out. You haven't even talked about Theo Pinson at all.
Pinson, Barry was probably our best player. Theo Pinson was the most important, most indispensable. Going to this small lineup, Pinson is the guy that made that work. Because he would be able to guard 1 through 5. When he played Duke, he was the guy in the middle of the zone on offense that was dishing the ball out, making things happen. So Pinson is one we're going to really miss, and his leadership, the way he kept guys loose. So those guys, like we said, those guys will be missed. Disappointing end. But next year is an opportunity for Seventh Woods to step up. Maybe he takes that opportunity. I'm not real sure. I've got my opinions on that, but we're bringing in the first top 5 recruiting class in a number of years with Nasir Little and Kobe White and Rashawn Black. Some discussion about whether Cam Johnson will return. So we'll see. Let some guys go through their NBA draft stuff and get their feedback. I expect most of them to return. I believe I read somewhere the other day that Luke May is going to be the focal point of the team next year, BG. So basically they're going to revolve the team around Luke May. I expect them to go big a little bit more. I think you'll see a little more Manley and Brooks combinations. I think this was we did it your way last year. Now we're going to go back to doing it my way this year. Stance from Roy. So I expect a few more bigger lineups.
Who was the your way anyway? I mean,
I think there was a lot of pressure. Yeah, a lot of pressure from the players wanted to go smaller. Mm-hmm. But I know the fans did, and I'm not. Roy doesn't. He's not one to really listen to the fans.
Well, I mean, let's be honest too.
But he hears it.
He didn't have the talent he wanted to run his system. I mean, he wouldn't have done it last year.
No,
I mean,
and look, going small was the right. I mean, it's the right call. That was the best lineup we had. It was the right call, man. But like I said, games like this are always a possibility when you play with a lineup like that. Ask Duke. I mean, Duke's been in the same boat before. When you shoot that many threes, you're that reliable on them. When they don't hit, you don't lose a close game. When you don't hit your threes and you don't make those jump shots, when you lose, it's a ball of flames. And
right?
That's what happens.
And baseball, basketball is a lot like football in that you've got teams that can score outside, you've got teams that can score inside, then you have teams that can do both. And, you have football teams that can run the ball, can pass the ball, and then you've got teams that can do both. And obviously the teams that can do both are much harder to stop.
They are. It's, usually we're able to do both.
Yes.
This year, not so much. I'm interested to see how they look next year. Because the last 5 years, you had Marcus Page, you had Bryce Johnson, you had Joe Barry. You had a lot of guys who were there for a lot of years. So next year's going to be a little different. Kenny Williams and Luke May are going to be the guys who played the most, who returned the most experience. And so we're going to have some young guys who are going to be relied upon heavily next year. And then we've got some guys like Seventh Woods and Brandon Robinson who have played a lot of basketball but not necessarily had major roles. And so see how those guys step into those bigger roles next year. Seventh Woods particularly, if he stays, is one that
I'm in favor of him not staying. Just for the record.
If he stays, and the kind of the thought right now is he's going to have the inside track to the starting point guard position next year. Roy always values experience. If he stays, stays healthy, continues to improve, I think he may start the season as a starter. Whether or not he ends that way,
right,
is a different story. But
it's
up to him. I mean, it's going to be up to him. He's going to have the opportunity, but he's going to be one that, like we said, keep an eye on. Could have a big role next year.
I found there was a story that ran, and I almost hesitate to mention it because I can't find it now. I was looking on my phone while you were talking, and just about an hour before we went on the air, that there had been some initial rumors now that the assistant coach at South Carolina that was involved in the FBI report, who has since left the school, has been found to have had no illegal contact with anyone. No, that's a different coach. Not the one that left. Not the one in the original FBI report. Okay.
That guy went to Oklahoma State.
I'm turned around there.
Yeah, he's talking to that. I saw that article you're talking about. He's talking about a coach that's on the staff currently.
Okay, well, that's good because I didn't even know that was a subject of investigation. So instead of being good news, it's really awful news. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Anytime.
But until we find that out, I have no view on what South Carolina's basketball team will look like next year because we may not have one. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see.
I don't think you'll have Brian Bowen, but that's a different discussion. Hour 1 in the books. Hour 2, we're going to let BG talk a little college baseball. The Gamecocks took on the Gators this weekend. Didn't fare so well, so we'll see what he has to say about that. Set up some NBA playoff picture scenarios. 1 and 2 in each conference seems pretty safe. 3 through 8 is going to be a wild ride over the last week and a half or so. And also, we will let you know. We'll talk a little bit more, circle back around to the NCAA Tournament. We'll look ahead to the Sweet 16, the Elite 8. Maybe make some Final Four predictions. BG, you got anything else?
Nope. I am good for hour 1, ready to talk some baseball.
Hour 1 in the books.